Time now for our weekly roundtable discussion. I'm joined by Levi Gilbert and Tim Roach, the voices of the Wampus Cats. And tonight, the Cats are back at home taking on North Little Rock. Now, before we talk about the Charging Wildcats and a team that's struggling, let's talk about last week's opponent, Little Rock Southwest. Both teams are 0-4, but it kind of seems like they're maybe going different directions. Your thoughts on last week's Little Rock Southwest game, guys?
I think that's an interesting point to hit on, Jeff, is because those two teams they're going to be playing each other not this week but the next week, and man, that's a game I'm going to be keeping an eye on because I think might be a surprising outcome in that game. Yeah, I mean Southwest they've got athletes. I mean we talked about it last week. They've got some of the ingredients. It's just it hasn't all kind of baked together yet, and so maybe a few years down the road it could look a lot different. But you saw it in that second quarter, when we started plugging some new guys in, things got a little interesting. Southwest was able to march right down the field and score. And then we had an interception that led to another score. And all of a sudden it was a two-score game. I think our guys all woke up at that point and got their heads back in it, and then it was not a game after that. But you definitely saw moments from Southwest where you could tell, oh man, maybe this is a team. I don't know how quickly they're ascending, but it seems like there's some incremental ascension that's happening in that program.
For me, it was that we did have that moment. Levi mentioned it in the second period when it was 28-0. They were on the ropes. It was a blowout at that point. They come back and score defensively and offensively. And for the first time in a long time, we were challenged, and I was very interested. I didn't think we were going to lose the ball game, but I was very interested to see how we would respond because you knew that the coaching on the sidelines from Buck James and staff was going to be a little bit in their face. And boy, I mean, immediately 14 points, you turned around and it's the same score it was before, and we were moving on. So I was really glad to see us get challenged. Didn't like that it happened, but I was glad to see how we responded, and boy, did we respond.
So Conway gets the win. They are now 4-0, 1-0 in conference play. Southwest drops to 0-4, 0-1, which is the same record as North Little Rock. Tonight's opponent, they're the team that's going the other way. I can't get my arrows straight, but you know what I'm saying. That North Little Rock program is not in a good way, guys. What have you learned in your preparation for tonight's game?
It's shocking. I mean, we saw them a year ago. They struggled. I think they were 1-3 when we played them at this time last year. They were struggling even then, but it's just like a whole new level this year, and it's just alarming because you can think about it wasn't even 10 years ago. They were maybe the premier team in the state. I mean, the premier program. They won one state championship. They were in the finals. What it seemed like 4 years in a row or something like that. And I mean, it's just crazy that it has dropped off this quickly, and it should be alarming for I think any program in the 7A that you can see what can happen if things aren't quite in place that you need to be in place to be a successful program. And I hate it for North Little Rock. I was looking this week. We played them 4 years ago, and they scored more points in that one game against us. They won that night. It was the last time they beat us. They scored more points in that game than they've scored in 4 games this entire season. And it's just offensively, they just can't really get things going. And defensively, it seems like they're playing on their heels a little bit. But I always think back to the year when we went to Cabot and we were 0-5. And Cabot was 5-0, and we went in there and we blew their doors off. So I always keep that in mind. If you've got enough athletes, anything can happen on a Friday night. And so I don't want to get too confident. I know our coaches aren't going to let our team get too confident. But you always have that in the back of your head when you're playing a program like North Little Rock.
Well, they're building for the future. I mean, you can tell by the number of sophomores that are on their team and the size of the team when we get out there. Conway's been pretty much bigger than anybody that we've played so far, and you will definitely see that when we play tonight. I feel bad for them. I don't in some ways, but I do in some ways, because you want to see competition across the conference be somewhat equal. You would like to be able to be dominant, but not in this fashion. This is a team that we should beat handily, and if we don't, that'll be a challenge for Buck James and his coaching staff. We should come in and do what we want to here. It's just a tale of two teams in totally opposite directions.
So as we mentioned, they're 0-4, 0-1 in conference play. Their game last week was against Pulaski Academy at home. PA's first game in the 7A Central, and they beat them 47-0. So looking at the other games in the 7A Central, that PA team playing their first home game in conference action. They're hosting Little Rock Central. Cabot is going to be at Southwest, our opponent last week and our opponent next week. And then Bryant travels to Little Rock Christian, as Christian knocked off Cabot a week ago, and hosting Bryant tonight. Good slate of games. Your thoughts on tonight's action across the conference?
Yeah, I think everyone's eyes probably going to be on Bryant and Little Rock Christian, because there's, the top four is who I expected the top four to be after the first week of conference play, and that's Bryant, us, and PA and Little Rock Christian. But this will be, the first real test for Bryant, in conference play, because they played Central last week. It wasn't much of a game, and it's going to be a really big test for Christian to say, hey, we're up here in the 7A now. How can we compare against a real 7A power? They're going to find that out quickly. I will say that Cabot and Southwest game, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that, because after what we saw from Southwest last week, man, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that game's a little more interesting than folks might expect.
Yeah, that's the one I was going to lean on is that one. I will be interested to see if the athletes that Southwest has, that they're figuring out. It looked to me like they're starting to figure out where to get those guys in the right spots. If they do that, they could be trouble for anybody. Cabot might have too much talent just across the board, but if Southwest figures it out, they could be trouble.
All right, thanks, guys. We will kick things off tonight at 7 o'clock across the conference. Our broadcast begins at 6:30 on Conway Corp Channel 5 and online at conwaycorp.com/WC to go. 6:30 for the pregame, 7 o'clock for the kickoff tonight between North Little Rock and the Conway Wampus Cats.